Everyone talks about trauma these days, but what is trauma really? Let's unpack this together. Hello, I am Nicoleta Porojanu. I'm a survivor of childhood trauma myself, and I'm very curious to understand and heal this global pandemic of psychological trauma. So, what is trauma? Sometimes we talk about little upsets of life as being traumatizing. Other times we talk about very challenging circumstances as being part of life. How can we discern what counts as trauma and what not in this ocean of human life experience? And who makes the decision? Who decides what is traumatizing for you and what not? We really need to have this conversation together to become trauma informed. So let's start from scratch. The word trauma comes from the Greek language and is translated as wound. It was recorded first towards the end of 17th century to describe a physical wound, a bruise, a cut, or a contusion, and it remains used in medicine as a trauma experience to this day. 2 centuries later, towards the end of the 19th century, on Freud's time actually, the word trauma started to be used to describe a psychological wound, or they called it a psychic wound. And this is the definition we have in the dictionary today. Trauma is a deeply disturbing and distressing mental experience or an emotional shock following a very stressful life event. The antonym, the opposite word for trauma, is healing. So we have a little understanding of what the journey requires from trauma to healing. And I'm sharing this not only because I love history and anthropology, but to clarify that our understanding of trauma is very limited because trauma has been in our narrative for only 130 years. And what is that comparing to the history of humanity of 2.5 million years? Just a blink of an eye. And if we look at what happened throughout times, trauma-informed practices have only started to be implemented in 1970, right before I was born, actually, as a result of the impact of the Vietnam War on the American veterans. So we are quite early in understanding trauma, that's it, but new discoveries are being made every single day, and you and me, we are in fact, in our lives, huge research labs themselves. So what is trauma? How does it look like in real life? I have two favorite definitions that make sense to me that have been verified by my work experience in my own life and the experience of my clients in therapy. And the first definition comes from Bessel van der Kolk, a Dutch-American psychiatrist that wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score, Mind, Brain, and Body in the Transformation of Trauma. And he defines trauma as the imprint of a traumatic event that still lives inside of you. The second definition comes from Dr. Gabor Matei, a Hungarian-Canadian physician that has authored many books that cover the topic of trauma. I've only read 3 of them, and the most important is the last book, published in September 2022, last year, called The Myth of Normal, Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. Dr. Mate defines trauma as what happens inside of you as a result of what happened to you in the past. What is important to mention is that these two definitions only refer to the experienced trauma, to the lived trauma, to that trauma that we face throughout our journey in life. It does not include any of those types of trauma that have been transmitted to us through our ancestry, which we call ancestral or transgenerational trauma. And I will get into this in more detail in the future at some point. So, if you've been exposed to events and circumstances that have left something in you, that have created something inside of you, in all parts of your being, in your body, in your mind, in your soul, or you better call it heart or emotion, and these events have left an imprint on you that still lives inside of you to this day. And whatever you do, whatever you have, whoever you are, whatever you've achieved, however you've changed and transformed, whatever your education and personal development, you still feel that something was left unresolved in you as a result of an isolated event or a sequence of events in your childhood, then you might have been traumatized. But don't worry. If there is an imprint left in you, that can be removed. And what happened inside of you as a result of what happened to you, that can be healed. And I'd love to guide you in your healing journey. So keep watching. Thumbs up if you like this and subscribe so I can let you know when a new video is published.